Okay, could you tell the American people why we're here today? You have a pin that says April 24th. What does that mean?
And the Turks, the Ottoman Turks had a movement to eradicate all the Christian Armenians out of. It began 1907, as soon as the Russian revolution began, and that started, and the Bolsheviks, it came from the north, and the Turks came from the east, and it took over Armenia, where now all that's left of Armenia is a tiny bit of land. Before it was like this.
So it was absorbed into Turkey.
Yeah, and the Turkish, the Ottoman Empire was influenced by Armenia and by Armenian culture. Now, all Armenia has left is land this big, whereas in ancient Armenia it was enormous.
The Armenian people want to get out the story that their people were genocided.
Sure.
They say up to 1.5 million, maybe more. And when did that genociding begin? On April 24th, 1915?
I'm not sure of the exact date. During April 24th, 1915, that was the main time that all the genocide happened. They killed over 1.5 million people. In America, all you hear about is the Jewish Holocaust, and when people talk about a Holocaust, all they think of is the Jewish Holocaust. But before the Jewish Holocaust, there was actually the Armenian Genocide, and if the Armenian Genocide never happened, the Jewish Holocaust might have not happened. So
yes, that's a very important fact. And Kemal Atatürk didn't kill any Jewish people either. I'm a Greek American, and I know almost 1.5 million Greek Christians were killed and 800,000 Assyrians. And what is it that you would want to tell the Americans? Do you want them to know about this historical fact?
Of course, this is a fact, and even though the Turkish government denies every bit of it, it is a historical fact that should be taught in all the schools and all the educational institutions all over the world.
And did you lose any family members?
I haven't specifically, but my grandmother is from Orfu in Turkey, and her family was a part of the deportations.
But there were more than deported. I understand you're aware of the death marches, where they marched the people so that they would collapse and die in the winter and in the summer. That's how they achieved the deaths of many people, by marching them apparently into the desert, into Syria, and all over the place.
Yeah. Yes.
And you're a musician, you say?
I'm a musician. I'm going to be playing at the ceremony today.
that the Jewish American political lobby, which is amongst the most powerful in this country, has allied itself with the Turkish and Azeri lobbies against the Armenian cause. In the fall of 2000, when the genocide resolution was proceeding through the House of Representatives, the Jewish American lobbies have furiously lobbied against it. It's very sad but true. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, the Armenian National Committee of America sent a letter to the leading Jewish lobbying organization, AIPAC, calling them to task for the position that they've taken. The government of Armenia has protested to the government of Israel over Israel's refusal to categorize the Armenian genocide as a genocide, for its recent military alliance with Turkey. Unfortunately, in the world of geopolitics, Israel sees that it is in its national interest to ally itself with Turkey, and that in turn has translated into American Jewish lobby organizations working against us. They definitely were a hindrance on the genocide resolution. On Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act, we were able to fight them off in 1999. When they attempted to repeal it, the Jewish American lobbies were working with the U.S. State Department, unsuccessfully, I might add. The only thing that makes a difference is either votes or money, and we don't have a lot of money, but we have a lot of votes. And I can guarantee you, I absolutely guarantee you, I promise you that when you call your representatives, when you send them a fax, when you send them a letter, it absolutely makes a difference, and they know it.
actually a survivor of the Armenian Genocide? How did you survive? What year was it, and how did you survive?
I was born 1912, and that's when they started pushing the Armenians out of the Turkish land. I was just born. My mother and my grandparents, everybody started marching. That's how I became a survivor. And then for about 3-4 years, we roamed around until they found a place in Syria. And then they came back. They went back again 3 times. The Turks chased us out of our homes.
Was any of your family in the death marches?
Yes. My father died when I was 1 year old on the march.
Can you explain to the Americans what a death march was for the Armenians? Are you saying that the Turks purposely marched the people so they would die of the cold or the summer?
Get out of there. What they did was they wanted all the Armenians out of their land, out of their boundaries, and they didn't give any time. They just came to your door and they say march out. And so nobody had any way of doing, going in trains or nothing. They started marching. They got to the deserts and they had to march and march until they came someplace where they could get away. But in the meantime, while they were marching, some were dying, some were sick. They did all kinds of atrocities. And that's when I lost my mother, and I didn't find her until I was 15 years old.
So how many of your family did you lose?
I have lost about 8 or 9 of them. My grandparents, my uncles, my aunts.
And you want the American people to know about this?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm a Greek American. I'm trying to explain the fact that Greek Christians died too, and Assyrians, that are altogether maybe 6 million people died.
That's right.
And so this is genocide because the Turks willfully marched you knowing that many people would die on the marches.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes, and they helped them die. Some of the soldiers would come and start slashing the pregnant woman's stomachs and taking the babies out and throwing them around. Of course, all these they have told me because I was just an infant.
And who carried you to safety?
In the meantime, my grandmother and her family and my mother were together with me, and they got lost. They got separated. Some were dying or falling down and all that. So we were separated. My grandmother took care of me wherever they went with me, and then years and years ago, about 15 years later, I found my mother. That she was in another caravan and separated.
Well, I thank you very much for sharing your story. I hope it helps people understand so this never happens again.
I hope so.
Thank you.
It's really, and I never had a childhood. I never had the love of a father or a mother or anything because everybody was gone. My father died. My mother was lost. But I made a good family.
Well, thank you. And we pray to God it never happens again.
I hope not. And where I came from?
Where?
In 1929.
Where?
I came from Greece.
Please be seated. Also with us this afternoon, we have a United States Congressman, Patrick Kennedy. Representative Kennedy has visited Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh and is a member of the Congressional caucus on Armenian issues. He participated in the observance of the Armenian Genocide, which was held in Washington on April 17th of this year. Ladies and gentlemen, Congressman Patrick Kennedy.
Let me begin by saying what an honor it is for me to represent you as your congressman in the United States Congress, and to join my family's long legacy of supporting, raising the issues of Armenia to the public's attention, whether it be the issues of the Armenian Genocide. My good friend and colleague, Lieutenant Governor Fogarty, said that evil is allowed to triumph when good men and women do nothing. There's another saying, and that is, history is doomed to repeat itself for those who've never learned from history. We've seen history repeat itself over and over in the 20th century with the Holocaust, with what happened in the Balkans, with what happened in Rwanda, with what happened in Laos. We see it in too many places, and we see it in our own day and time. And in my mind, this evil is an ever-present challenge to good men and women. And we had better learn from history, or we will repeat it again. So when we talk about remembering the Holocaust and genocide of the Armenians in 1915, we're talking about recognizing evil, whether it be because that's the same evil that presented itself in World War II to the Jews. It's the same evil that's presented itself over and over again in the 20th century. We are not here as anyone else but human beings. This is not an Armenian genocide. This is a genocide of human beings. And all of us as human beings have a stake in remembering. Because as the Martin Niemöller quote goes, first they came for the trade unionists, and I was not a trade unionist, so I did not speak up. And then they came for the Catholics, and I was not a Catholic, so I did not speak up. And then they came for the Jews, and I was not a Jew, so I did not speak up. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak up. If we learn anything from history, it's that we're all in it together. All of us are human beings. All of us belong to the same human race. And if we don't learn from what has happened in history, whether it happens to the Jews or the Armenians or the Rwandans, we're doomed to repeat it. And I want to say I have been honored as your member of Congress to stand up to make sure our Congress of the United States joins the civilized world, like other countries around the world have, in recognizing what happened in 1915 was a genocide, will be remembered as a genocide, and this, the greatest country in the face of the earth, has an obligation to live up to its credo and make sure we recognize it. I also look forward to working with all of you to continue to support the country of Armenia. It is going through a great deal of transition. It is our ally. It is our democracy. It is in a sea of dictatorships. We ought to recognize it holds the same common values as we do here in America. And that is why I was so honored to go and visit Armenia, to have the opportunity to visit with President Kocharyan, to meet with then Secretary of Defense Sarkeesian, and then to mourn with all of you during the brutal assassination of the Prime Minister. Let me say I have been honored as your state representative to join with John Simonian to make Rhode Island one of the first states to recognize Nagorno-Karabakh, and I've been pleased pleased to represent you when I went to Nagorno-Karabakh to see for myself the war-ravaged area. But I also saw something else. I saw the spirit of the Armenian people alive and well in Nagorno-Karabakh. And I will work with my good friend Senator Reid to make sure that we do all that we need to do in the Central Caucasus to make sure we look out for Armenia and not overlook Armenia in our rush. So it's an honor for me to represent you. Thank you for the warm reception. And let me say, I will stand with you in making sure that I do everything I can to make sure our country does what it has to do to live up to its principles and recognize this horrible chapter in world history, the Armenian Genocide. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Kennedy. Next, I'd like to introduce our own state senator, Mr. Aaron Garabedian.
Bring to your attention 2 volumes. I have 1 and 2 called the Encyclopedia of Genocide, Volume 1 and Volume 2. It was written by the Editor-in-Chief, Israel W. Chani. If you want to learn about genocide, not only our own, about the genocides that have been inflicted upon all the people of the world, you must have these 2 volumes. Prior to that, as a young man, I always heard the word Henry Morgenthau. I never knew who Henry Morgenthau was. My father just told me, Henry Morgenthau, a great man. And later on, as I grew older, I looked into who Henry Morgenthau was. He was the ambassador to Turkey. He was the man who started the food drive to help Armenians, the poor-starving Armenians. And Henry Morgenthau was on the scene. He reported in many of the volumes. Up until the time of Vahan Dadrian, who wrote the book, took him 20 years to write the history of the Armenian Genocide. The references in here are the most thorough ever put together in history about the Armenian Genocide. And what is really gratifying is that Yale University confirmed that these references were accurate. It is nearly 100 years that these volumes have been put together. We've had the personal testimony of different Armenians, but now we put it in the books. We challenge the historians, and today the Turks have a new program of denial, which is going on for the past number of years. They are on a campaign. And I want to tell you something. They are well organized, and when they came to the State House 2 years ago, I got email from over 300 locations in the world. Professors at different universities. I even have one that probably used government money when he sent an email from the Pentagon. I was livid about that. So they are here to stay. But the Armenians have not been just idling by. We have several benefactors in Washington who've donated some $8 million. And whether the Turks like it or not, or the rest of the world, there will be a genocide museum in our capital for everybody to see, because they can say what they want. The denial can't go away. That museum is going to be near the White House, and no matter who the president is, other than Ronald Reagan a few years ago, who recognized the word genocide, we have problems with our presidents who get elected, who say one thing, and after they get elected, they shy away. We don't accept that. But for the people on this stage, they are consistent with their statement. They do not run away. They don't run away here, and they don't run away in Washington. And a week or so ago, we had 162 members of the House, including our congressman and Congressman Langevin, who signed on that there was a genocide. We in Rhode Island have the best organized state of support of any state in America, consistently. Because I talk to Washington all the time. In Rhode Island, that's a tribute to you, all the organizations. Whether you're a member of the ANC, a member of the Armenian Assembly, we in Rhode Island have one common cause, and that is for everyone to remember we are not going away. We're not going to ever go away. There's a big attempt in Washington, it's happened, where the Turkish government has hired all kinds of lobbyists. They are working very hard. And I would say this, as we approach 2005, to be 90 years, I've said this before, I really think if we don't get this passed by 2005, we should have a national Armenian holiday of all of us leaving our jobs, leaving our homes, and going to Washington, D.C. in 2005. Everyone, buses, cars, all over America, because 90 years is too long. Hopefully we'll pass it before then. But I'll lead the march. Thank you.
Are you friends?
We are friends now. We've been very friends right here now. We are friends all the time.
And are you a survivor, ma'am?
She's not surviving from the same place that I was surviving.
From another place?
Another place. We not all live in one village.
Well, who's older now?
Well, I'm 92. I don't know what she is.
92.
92?
Well,
What do you remember? How did you survive?
She doesn't understand English. She doesn't know.
You want to
English.
translate for me in Armenian?
Yeah, I know the story.
No, but are you her
Daughter.
Okay, why don't you stand next to her and tell us your story? Okay.
Oh, you got it. Oh, videotaping it.
Can you tell us how your mother survived?
She recalled that she was 5 years old and the Armenians were gathered in one area and the Turk decided to kill them all at once.
This is in 1915?
Yes.
This is after April 24th?
Yes, she was, no, during April.
This is during April?
Yeah, she was 5 years old and she said...
What village was this?
It's a name. The name is Zonguldak. It's in Turkey.
And what do you know about that day as she's been able to tell you?
She told me like a couple years ago about this. I wrote it down.
I know it's difficult and painful to talk about it, but so the American people can understand, if you can tell us what happened on that day.
The happening that happened that day was a miraculous one. They were gathered in one area, and the Turks, with their leaders to kill all of them, they were two young mothers. They kneeled down and they started praying. And miraculously, I don't know how it happened, the guns and everything fell down of their hands and they were scared. She said they were shaking, the soldiers, they were shaking and they were scared. And they said, okay, let's leave these people, give them food, give them help, let them go. We don't want to kill them. That's how she was survived.
So she was right. A miracle happened on
Yes.
the day that they were going to kill everybody in the village?
Yes.
and the Turkish, their guns fell down and they couldn't do it?
They couldn't understand what was happening.
You mean they were going to kill her mother and the 5-year-old?
Yeah, all the women and the children.
Did they all survive?
All survived.
And there's this miracle story, huh?
Yes.
What's the name of this village again? It's incredible.
Yes, she says it's close to Black Sea. It's in Golis, they say,
Is
Constantinople.
it near Samsunda?
I don't know where it is.
But it's near the Black Sea.
Yes.
I see. And that's how she was able to survive.
Yes.
And then from that, your great-grandmother brought them. How did they escape out of Turkey?
They went to Lebanon.
They went to Lebanon, huh? Do you know how they got to Lebanon? I'm an independent documentary filmmaker. Why, do you want to tell me something? I'm an independent.
I don't know. She's saying no boat, nothing, but they were on horses.
She remembers being on
Horses and coming all the way to Lebanon. I don't know.
Does she remember how many were saved by that miracle?
Գիշես որ չախնոշ կար ատ խումբը որ եկան որ պիտի մերցնեին գիշես գիները աղոթեցին եւ զենքերը ցերկերնեն ինգա մորցերես Hundreds.
Hundreds. Were they men, women, and or
Just women.
just
Just women.
mothers, and
children
the
and
Turks were gonna
whites.
gun down all of them? I see. How old you were in 1915? Do you remember anything about how you survived?
I was 12.
12. You were 12. You were born in 1903.
1902.
Really? And what do you remember about
I
1915?
don't remember because they killed my father.
In front of you?
No, in army.
Oh, they killed your father.
Yeah.
They drafted him into the
And
Turkish.
my mother, no writing, no read.
I see.
I was going in a kindergarten. How old I could be?
Well, maybe
I'm not a
6 or 7 years old.
No, 7. You kid.
No? So tell me, how many?
I started kindergarten 5 years old
You were 5, so around 1908.
because I come right time out to Mexico. The Turk friends told my father, Ruben, take your children and leave this place. Get out, because they're gonna kill all Armenians. My father knew. Have to tell all this story. I know all about what was going on. See, that's the way my father saved me and my little brother, who was only 9 months old. My mother was on a horse going, we're gonna go travel Turkey, Istanbul. All that, I was in a sack. And my brother was with me. They used to put one apple, cover up with a big quilt. And we travel on a horse, sideways in a bag, 3 days until we reach Turkey. After that, I don't know too much. I know they took me in a school, they didn't take it, and said, oh, I'm not old enough for the kindergarten. And I guess 5 years old, I was in the kindergarten, start get education, because my father was intelligent guy. I owe my life today. I live. My father saved my life.
It's a difficult story, I know, but you can help a lot of people with your story.
My family.
Your father saved you by being in intelligence, and he knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And he was able to rescue you and
Yeah.
a
And
brother.
all millionaires over there in a country, they kill all my people. My people, they kill.
They were killed, huh?
I had a Harvard family.
Uh-huh. But because your dad knew it was happening or gonna happen, he was able to get you out of the
Some
country.
Turk,
A good Turk told him.
yeah, tell my father, or Rupen, get out of here.
Uh-huh.
Take your family, get the hell out of here. They're gonna kill people.
So that good Turk who was a
My-
friend of your father's told him, and he left immediately.
Yeah.
Did anybody stay behind and get killed?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Do you know what that town was, where that was?
No, I don't know. I was only 4 years old. I was in a sack.
In the sack and the horse.
Horse, yeah. I remember.
And what country did you escape out to when you left Turkey? Was that 1915 when you got out?
No, I get out of Turkey. I get out 1921.
I see. Uh-huh.
1921, I come to school.
The year, though, that your father saved you, what year was that?
1914, 15,
1915.
15,
And you went to,
15.
and then you went to another part of Turkey, and then you were able to get out in 1921.
Yeah.
Were you able to get out with your father?
No, my father, they killed in the army.
Ah, he later got killed, huh? But he's able to save you.
Yeah, my brother. And my brother died 5 years ago. Over here, I bought him.
I'm very happy that you're able to tell us a story so that we can get the recognition. I'm a Greek American, and I'm trying to
Yeah.
tell the story for the Greeks and then
I
the
don't
Armenians.
believe you, Mommy.
And the Syrian people suffered too,
Yeah.
huh? All the Christian people.
Lot of
Yeah.
oh, you,
Well, God bless you that God has kept you
you
well.
know how they killed my grandma?
Now, how'd they kill you?
My grandma said they were picking up the woolen nights, quills. Leave that for my children. They take that big knife, throw on her neck, kill my grandma. Don't put that in a paper.
I see. So we can't forget these things, and we got to help people remember. My name is Paul. What's your name?
Paul Rose Appin.
Rose Appian?
Appi. Rose Appi.
Oh, Rosapi. Oh, that's a beautiful name.
Well, that's my
Maybe I'll try and... Well, I want to thank you. You must be tired. Thank you for the interview. You have a beautiful day now.
you too.
Okay, thank you.
I help all the world in America for this church
That's wonderful. It's a beautiful church.
since 1921. I got married over here.
Ah,
I'm baptized. I am 5 generations.
wow. Do you have grandchildren here?
Great, great, great grandchildren.
Wonderful.
5 generations.
That's, well, thank you again.
Yeah.
This is my father,
Yes.
and this is me, and this is another survivor, and this is another survivor.
Was this
and,
last year?
And this is it's 2000.
In the year 2000?
April 24th, and at North
How old
Providence.
was your dad in that picture?
That time was 98,
98, huh?
or 97.
So tell me, he's not
97.
here with us today, but why don't you tell us something about your dad? He's a survivor of the Armenian
Yes,
Holocaust.
here is him. He he was 12 years old when the
Escaped.
genocide started. He was 12 years old.
In
And
1915.
1915, yes. His father came to America to find a job, 1912.
Uh-huh.
And after that, the genocide when started, his mother, grandmother, and two brothers he had, all together one day he explained that Turkish government says that they have to move from their house to another place.
You mean all in one day they had to move?
Just suddenly from government came
In 1915, one day they just came in and
they
said,
say you have to move to another place, but they don't know it's genocide. Just you have to move from these houses to another place, but they don't know where are they going. And in the morning they wake up and they start to walk and they put signs on their doors that they can't come back again.
Oh.
And they closed their doors and they went. And even he said, we forgot something in the house. My mother asked me to go and take that. And he jumped from the behind the house, the window, and took maybe some important thing for
Yes.
them. And they come back and they walk. They say they took all, who was walking, all their young children, women, and that's it. And elderly. There is no any men's. All the men's they divided from that.
they took all the men
Separately, and they took only women's, children, and elderly, and they were walking. And they are walking, they don't know how long they will walk with. And during that days, it comes morning, night, and they find some places that another Armenians, they left their house, they went to sleep night, their houses. Then the morning they will start to walk again. And one day he said, I don't know how many days they walk, and they were in that area, in somebody's house, and they are sleeping. In the morning when he wake up, he touched his mother to wake her up, and his mother was moving all his body. And he recognized that she was killed, and blood all over. And everybody, grandmother and grandfather, I think they were there, only brothers and him were survived. And in the morning he started to cry, and Turkish woman approached to him. They said, why you are crying? And he explained, you don't see what happened, everybody killed, only we are alive. And the Turkish woman said, do you want to come with us? And my father said, yes, what can I do? Take what you have with you, take and come with me. And my father said, I have nothing, just myself. And then his brother was crying the other side. He had two brothers. And the woman says, the Turkish woman says, why he's crying? My father explained that he wants to come with us. And that Turkish woman took my father and two brothers and make him in their house as a shepherd, to be shepherd for that sheep, and they have a big. But they divide my father's brother from him to another side, to another town. And my father, when he said every morning, I had only one bread and one clothes. I was sleeping at night and wake up with that clothes, and I'm going to the mountains with my sheep. Anyway, just that goes a few times. I don't know how many years he was there. Maybe 2 years he did that. But one day he said even wolf came to that when he survived from wolf. 6 wolves standing near his sheep. And some other Turkish shepherd says, just don't move. I am throwing some big stone. And the stone from up the mountain.
Yeah.
They rolled that stone, and that stone went, and after that wolf they gone, and he survived. He had a very hard life. Then one day he decided, when he heard that there is an orphanage they opened near Sebastia. This is Armenia, historical Armenia. And he said, I turned my sheep to the home back, and I went to the other side. I don't know what happened with that. He left.
He escaped Turkey.
He escaped, and he left. He said, I walk. I don't know how long I walked. and suddenly he saw some carriage, women and two girls in the carriage, and they asked, "Where are you going? Who you are?" They were Armenian too, and my father asked, "I heard that there is an orphanage somewhere. Can you tell me how to go?" And he said, "I was hungry and everything."
So how old was he in 1950 when he
He was
survived?
12 years old.
I see.
He was
So-
12. He was born 1902, and his father 1912 went to just came to America. He
Nice.
lived in the Boston, but because he was just after genocide, they lose each other. There is no contact between them.
So when he came
To orphanage. He then after that, my father went to the orphanage. He find that place. He was in orphanage until 1918, I think. After that, he went to another. After that, he went to Cairo, Egypt. Moved from their orphanage, and from Egypt to Armenia. Of course, he get married in Egypt with Armenian. My mother is Armenian. The same orphanage. They met each other, and after that, I was born there too. He had, my father had 5 children there. After that, we moved to Armenia.
Wow.
And 1962 from there. Now, 1988 we came here, and my father became citizen. 1997.
Hold it steady. I'll show.
Yeah, here is my father.
And this was the year 2000.
This is 2000, and 99 he becomes citizen. Here is 98 years old. When he was 97 year before, he became a citizen. And even it was a big article about his citizenship, become a citizen. Even after that, we received from Jack Reed
I see.
congratulation card because he became a citizen. His
But-
dream was to become a citizen because of, here is another picture of him.
I see. So he's
This is-
truly a survivor.
Yeah, he raised the flag. This is 2000 at the,
But when he was a teenager, when they had to leave that all in one day, and then they woke up in that house, he woke up, was it his mother was dead?
killed. They killed
And
his
how
mom.
many other people were killed?
All people, they were killed here. Only they said look like they were survived. Nobody else. They touch everybody everywhere. It was blood, and
So-
they start to cry. And that lady approached that, "Why you are crying?" Somebody from outside, and they said,
She was
"Why?"
a good Turkish lady, huh?
She wants to use it. Turkish, good. They know what happened. Of
Yeah.
course, my father told me that when that day they start to say everybody will move from their house, they had a Turkish neighbor. They said they knew what will happen with Armenians, but my grandmother doesn't know what is this,
Yeah.
what happening. But the Turkish neighbors, they know what happening, and they were friend of my father's father. They said, "Come and escape in our house. We can keep you. Don't go with that walking," because they know after and they will be
They
killed.
walked them in the desert, so they
Yeah,
died
they
there.
walked, and even there was he said only maybe 4, 5 soldiers with guns, and all Armenians, they are walking inside. You can't have, even one of my brother's little brother, died on the walking time. When they are walking, there is no anything
No
to
food,
eat, no food,
nothing,
nothing.
till they fell
and
down.
they give money to that soldiers. They throw from up to the, bridge or somewhere. They throw all that who was killed.
Who was given money to the soldiers?
You have the people, Armenians, they give gold. Just take this gold and take this baby, throw away. I can't take with me. You can't do anything. You have to walk with that.
Yes.
What you can do, you have nothing
So they
to
were
do.
giving money
They say,
to the
give
soldiers?
me money. Give me money that I can take your dead baby or dead somebody.
And keep the baby alive?
No, it's dead. Just they will throw.
So
or
they don't
throwing.
have to carry it?
No, because they can't. They have no
They
food.
couldn't save themselves if they had to carry the dead baby?
Yes.
That's a terrible story,
Terrible.
huh?
Wow, he had it, but he survived. Only from his family, only he survived. Only he survived, And even he in orphanage, they asked him to become maybe priest. And he said, I can't to become priest because he was very educated. He was very good in orphanage. He was very good.
And what's your father's name?
Hachik.
Hachik. Well, in the memory of Hachik, we wanna say thank you to his spirit.
Yeah.
Want to tell me anything else, or do you think?
What can I say? He had wonderful, just what can I say? He educated, he went in Egypt, Leonardo da Vinci. He graduated from School of Design. He became lithography. And he was working in typographia. He was a master. He worked, he was a good master of lithography. That's, even I have his work at home. He printed some.
Did your father do any lithography regarding the genocide?
No genocide. This is his work. He learned how to become. I would like to say he became a specialist of a lithography. And I have right now two brothers. I had one brother and one sister. They passed away a long time ago. And I have two brothers who they are married. They have children. And my father had 5 children, 5 grandchildren, and now 4 great-grandchildren.
No.
Yeah, and only he survived from his family, and we have his last name.
So your dad ended up in a Greek orphanage?
Yes, after that, Sebastian, he went to the Greek orphanage. From Greek orphanage, he went to Egypt. Already, he grown up that time, maybe he was 18 years old or 20 years old.
So how many years did he spend in Greece? He knew how to speak Greek?
He spoke a few languages, like 5 languages even. He knew Italian, he knew Arabic, and he knew other languages because of where he lived.
He had to move,
He learned, but he graduated himself as a lithography. And
so the massacre,
he did his living with
the massacring, because it was 1915, nobody knew yet what was in store for the Armenians, and then later it happened to the Greeks and it happened to the Assyrians up until 1922. Huh?
I would like to say he was just lucky to be survived that day.
When do you think he realized that it was a genocide and
of course,
right away?
After when they saw that killed, then of course when he was in orphanage, end up in orphanage, and you know what happened.
And there were other children.
My mother says the same thing. My mother was little that time. She was 5 years old when the genocide started, and her mother was helping other Armenians. And American people, I don't know what they say, American came to help take Armenian children to the orphanage. They opened American orphanage. They open and they are collecting all over places that if there is some orphan children to take orphanage. And my mother says only 2 sisters. They were all alive, but just separated, my mother's side. And they put in a donkey 2 baskets. In one side, my sister, the other. And my mother says when we are going under the bridge, we saw Turkish, they are killing people. We say, and we start to yell. And the man who is American said, don't yell. We are just passing from here. And they were in the baskets, the donkey basket, and they took them to the orphanage that way.
And your mother remembers all the crying and the screaming?
Yeah. My
and
father
that's how your
old.
mother escaped?
My mother escaped from their house. They said, I was outside just sitting. I was waiting, where is my mother will come, or my, father or anybody. And then that American man came. I said, do you want to go to the orphanage, stay here? And we decided to go to the orphanage because we have nothing. We need
so
to
you think your mother's mother and father must have been killed?
No, they were alive. They were alive because they changed their last name.
Oh.
They changed their last name. I think for that reason they were...
To make believe they were Turkish?
Some way, not 100%.
Yeah.
But just, I think there were some people they are helping too. Just they were
Some
lucky.
Turkish
Some
people were helping.
yes, or they find some ways how to do, maybe changing last name, and they don't find out that they are Armenian. They
see.
pass, and then. But my mother never see her mother, father at all, because she was in orphanage. After orphanage, she went
So,
to another orphanage from that
and that was the end.
Cairo, and that's it. Then we find each other in Turkey. They were alive in Turkey, and they wrote us letters with Turkish letters, but Armenian. Yeah.
So that's
but
your
I would like
mom's
to
story.
Say, mom, and they met each other in
Cairo.
no, in orphanage they met each other, but they get married in Cairo because
Oh.
all in Egypt they invite all that orphanage people if they would like to come there, and anyway they get married there.
You know what I think? I think you have to write a little book about this.
Yes,
It's a kind of a
maybe,
nice
yeah.
love story between your
Yeah.
mom and your dad, huh?
Yes, I have some people. They say I have some pictures of them. I
Yeah,
have
I
a lot
think
of
you
things.
got to do so.
I was thinking, I have a lot of things I kept myself. I have my father's even orphanage pictures.
And maybe you can do a love song. Because you play the piano, huh?
Yes, I'm doing that. To kill our Armenians, only keep just one Armenian to be in museum that people around the world, they know who they are, Armenians, that's it. But Armenians, how much you would like to kill, never will be killed. They, like, what can I say, like the mushroom comes up very fast.
Yeah.
Armenians, they grow up from one, for example, from my father's family, only he survived, but today we are, how many Mjans we have?
lot, huh?
He had 5 children, how I said, 5 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren from one person. That's mean never, the spirit is still there. We are Armenian and we are trying. I'm teaching in Armenian school too. I'm teaching Armenian songs, which I learned from my father. He learned in genocide days in orphanage, and I'm teaching that songs to my Armenian
Well, maybe we can
school.
put that song in the film if you keep in
We
touch
have
with me.
children, they are singing even, yes. I can, a lot of songs that, even there was an article that my father one time, he went to Armenian school, and we are singing about hero, Saint Bartan hero, and I told my students stand up, and we are singing this moment, and my father stand up too. I said, Father, you don't need to stand up. He said, no, I have to stand up and I have to sing this song. We were, we respect their memory this way.
Yes.
And he sang with our student, with my student, the same Armenian songs. He stand in the can, he had some can, stand up, and there is an article about that day, what happened and how he sang with the children. He was real Armenian.
His spirit is alive and well
even
in
I'm
you.
talking, I'm feeling he's around me right now.
Oh, I'm sure he
Yeah,
is. His spirit is everywhere.
he was-
And maybe a lot of people can see this and his spirit will go out.
Yeah, there was too many people. That elderly lady
Yes.
that you were, she knew very well my father. We
Ah.
went to her house one day, and I would like to say she met my father.
Well, I'm
in-
glad I met the survivors, at least 3 of
Yeah.
them. I did a
Yes.
little interviews.
Yes,
And
wonderful.
you're the daughter of
Yeah.
a survivor. Okay, so you,
That's okay.
God bless you
Thank you
and
so
your
much.
family.
Yeah,
and
thank you so much.
starved Armenians to be taken from dead and hide under the bodies of his friends and family members. There were no proper burials for the dead, no last rites given. If we continue to allow Turkey to deny that this genocide of an ancient people took place, those who died will never have the justice that they rightly deserve. 2 weeks ago, over 167 members of the House of Representatives joined my boss, Congressman Frank Malone, to send a letter to President Bush asking that he fulfill his campaign promise and use the word genocide in his annual April 24th address. Unfortunately, in this year's address, the President again fell short of properly characterizing the genocide, despite the will of Congress, the recognition of genocide in proclamations across the world, and the sheer weight of history. On that same day, more than 60 members of Congress joined Congressman Kapetanopoulos, Schiff, Nolenberg, and Cologne in introducing House Resolution 193, a resolution on the issue of genocide. This resolution reaffirms the support of the ratification of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide and anticipating the 15th anniversary of the enactment of the Genocide Convention Implementation Act of 1987. This resolution is an extremely important and timely measure. It not only speaks to the immeasurable wrongs done to the Armenian people, but also to the Jewish people during the Holocaust and the genocides in Rwanda and Cambodia. In the last 2 years, we have all seen after example of the repeated disregard for human life. This resolution would reaffirm that Congress recognizes the horrors of the last century and strives to prevent further genocides through vigilant education. Congressman Malone, on behalf of the Congressional Caucus on Armenian Issues, has committed to pushing House Resolution 193 through this Congress. He refuses to accept the argument that bowing to Turkey on behalf of national interest trumps the reality of history. As we embark on this new century, we must make certain that we have learned the lessons of mankind's tremendous capacity for brutality. And we must combat this with the truth about the past, compassion for common man, and our refusal to let these crimes against humanity be repeated. We must remember and learn from these tragic events that befell the Armenians. That is the only way that we can be certain that this horrific event, which almost destroyed one of the oldest cultures on the planet, can be prevented from happening again. Again, thank you all very much.
Legislative Director for Congressman Frank Malone Jr. Amen.
Our next speaker is Ara Hatem. Ara is the president of the New York Northeast chapter of Armenian Youth Federation and longtime home. He is also a dedicated active member in the New York, New Jersey Armenian community. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Ara Hatem. Today, that Turkey has informed that our fight against the regime is not
or the lack of use, I should say, of the term genocide. In my view, there's still a few people, regrettably, and a few institutions that decline to use the word genocide in respect of what happened to the Armenians from 1915 to 1923. What a lawyer sometimes does when there's doubt about how to use a particular word, what the lawyer sometimes can do is look to what the drafter's intent was. The drafter of the word genocide was Professor Raphael Lemkin. He coined the expression genocide in 1944. He himself escaped Poland before the Nazis came in, and I believe 49 of the members of his family perished at the hands of the Nazis. Lemkin said that the word genocide means the attempted destruction of a whole people. And he fought very hard for many years after World War II to try to get the United Nations Genocide Convention passed. And consistently, when he was explaining what the term genocide means, when he was fighting towards getting that convention passed, he referred to what happened to the Armenians as the prototypical genocide. So with that in mind, I submit to you that thinking men and thinking women, when they are describing what happened to the Armenians, should use the term genocide. Like I said, there's a few people, a few institutions that regrettably cannot use the word genocide. President George Bush does not use the word genocide. He says it's too bad. He says it's a tragedy. But he does not call it a genocide, and to that, I strenuously object. Nobel laureate Shimon Peres does not use the word genocide. He calls it a tragedy. He also says it was not a genocide, and to that, I strenuously object. The newspaper of record, the New York Times, this square is named after that famous newspaper. They don't use the word genocide, and as a New Yorker, I'm particularly upset with the New York Times because they're going backwards in their thinking. September 16, 1915, let me read an excerpt from a New York Times article. A Times correspondent says that all the reports from Turkey are agreed as to the terrible character of the Turkish atrocities against Armenians. It is believed that it is the official intention that this shall be a campaign of extermination. The same month, 2 weeks later, I read again a direct quote. The Cairo correspondent of the Times says, confirmation has reached here of reports of Armenian atrocities of a nauseating and appalling character. Undoubtedly, as on previous occasions, these outrages have been engineered from Istanbul. Let's fast forward to today. Well, what does the Times say now? The Times says, Armenians say that 1.5 million Armenians died. I noticed over the last few months, they don't even say 1.5 million. They say, Armenians say hundreds of thousands died. And then what really gets me going is when they say, and this again is a direct quote, what happened to the Armenians is, quote, hotly debated, close quote. I asked the New York Times, are you kidding me? The New York Times, in my view, is morally bankrupt, really, for referring to the genocide the way they have been recently referring to it. How dare they minimize the genocide? And how dare the New York Times let other would-be genocide perpetrators think that the court of public opinion is not going to hold them responsible? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Haik Vartanyan, who is an active member of our Metro Armenian community.
Dear friends and fellow Armenians, for 88 years all of us, from Yerevan to Beirut, from Los Angeles to New York, have come together to honor the hallowed memories of 1.5 million Armenian martyrs who perished in the years 1915 through 1923 by order of government of Turkey. It is incumbent upon us to pursue with all legitimate means a grand and sacred dream, to stand up for the Armenian rights, to be the defenders of our rights, and through the international recognition of the Armenian Genocide, to reassert ownership of our motherland, which is under Turkish occupation since 1915. At the dawn of the 21st century, we assumed that the United States learned that Turkey cannot be the friend of the American people. When the United States needed support of her ally last month, Ankara refused to give it. Instead, she advanced a variety of excuses. History repeated itself last month. As citizens of this great land, as lovers of freedom and liberty, we demand from the United States Congress and President George Bush to recognize the genocide of Armenians perpetrated by Ottoman Turkey. Turkey has demonstrated that she is not a friend of the United States of America. We Armenian Americans have demonstrated with our actions that we are upstanding and outstanding citizens of the United States of America. But national and international politics aside, our martyrs want us to be vigilant and keep the faith. At the dawn of the 21st century, we declare from this square that we will continue to abide by the wishes of our 1.5 million martyrs. We will pursue our just rights by just means, because we are the proud sons and daughters of Hayastan Yergir Trakhtabayr.
Thank you very much. We have just about 2 or 3 more speakers and we're going to be finished. These are short. And person who has always been with us, and it represents the unity of the Armenian community when it comes to this issue. I'm pleased now to introduce His Grace Bishop Manuel Batakian, Apostolic Exarch of the Roman Catholic Church. The Armenian Catholic Church, I'm sorry. Your Grace.
The sons and daughters of the Armenian people and their friends throughout the world stand today in a moment of prayer and homage in memory of those who sacrificed themselves in order to save their faith and their national dignity. The time of mourning has gone away for Armenians, and they are better to do than to lament and to cry for their dead. They want the world to make more and more alive the memory of the millions of innocent victims of the most barbarian act of the 20th century, and to render perennial their last will written with their blood. The Armenian people cannot forget this terrible tragedy because they are a civilized nation. And no civilized nation can forget the man and woman who made its history, defending their spiritual treasures with their heart and their spirit, and preferred to die in dignity than live in shame and dishonor. The Armenian people are not a vindictive people. They are not crying for vengeance, neither acting for retaliation. They are simply planning justice for their martyrs, by demanding that international law prevail also in their case, and the Armenian genocide be recognized as a crime that must never be forgotten, so that not another tyrant dare to repeat such a horror in the future. We pray for the victims of this genocide, but we pray also for the descendants of those who perpetrate this crime. It is a unique occasion for them to show that they also are a civilized nation, not identifying themselves with those who planned the extermination of an innocent people. So acting, they will not be humiliated. On the contrary, they will give the proof of their political maturity and moral conscientiousness. We pray the Lord. O Lord, the Armenian Americans pray you also for these wonderful people of United States of America, and they are grateful to them and to the leaders of this country, defenders of right and justice in their land and abroad, who generously welcomed and protected the survivors of the genocide. We ask you, O Lord, to grant your wisdom and your might to those who have the destiny of the world in their hands. Make them more and more sensitive to the suffering of those who have been or are yet oppressed or persecuted, so that humanity could know and enjoy a new era of reconciliation, justice, and peace. Amen.
Thank you, Your Grace. We're almost at the end of our program. I think we have a proclamation on behalf of the Governor of New York, Governor Pataki, by Daniela Dodov, and then we're going to have the benediction and the singing of God Bless America with Ruth Ann Terekian Druids. So, Daniela, would you come on up, please, and read that proclamation?
A proclamation by the State of New York Executive Chamber. Whereas the Empire State acknowledges events in history that have changed the course of the world and which have had a meaningful impact on our own nation's ethnic, cultural, and religious landscape, as a global leader in basic human and social rights, our state and its citizens have a prominent role in highlighting humanitarian concerns and important lessons that can be derived from mankind's past transgressions. And whereas the Armenian Genocide of 1915 to 1923 marks a tragic episode that resulted in the loss of an estimated 1.5 million lives and nearly extinguished the entire Armenian population, this campaign, organized by the ruling Ottoman authorities, under whose imperial authority most Armenians live, sought to deliberately exterminate Armenians by employing cruel and inhumane tactics. As they occurred, the atrocities committed against Armenian civilians were widely noticed but unchecked by the world community. And whereas many of New York and the nation's Armenian citizens who arrived in the early 1900s came here seeking freedom as survivors of the 20th century's first genocide, from the arrival of the first Armenians to our shores, the community has been a fruitful and noteworthy presence. However, greater effort in acknowledging the circumstances of their bittersweet trek to this country can help us understand the Armenian community far better. And whereas the final result of the Armenian Genocide was the near extinction of the Armenian people, the lost majority of their ancestral lands, and the dispersal of the deeply scarred survivors of this extreme crime against people, today Armenians throughout their diaspora struggle to preserve the rich language, cultural, and religious traditions of their homeland, a proud democratic republic free of decades of Soviet influence and oppression, but which occupies only a small part of its original territory. And whereas denial of the Armenian Genocide is an injustice to the people of Armenia and their history, as progress for full recognition of the genocide follows a steady pace towards global realization, every human being who acknowledges this historical fact is part of a growing community of people who treasure the truth and who respect other cultures, religions, and races. And whereas during the 88th anniversary of the onset of the Armenian Genocide, as the number of actual survivors diminishes with the passage of time, it is fitting that the people worldwide join the Armenian American community as it observes what is commonly referred to as Martyrs' Day. Likewise, the citizens of New York State share in the solemn commemoration of this tragedy and join in committing religious, communal, and philanthropic organizations as they honor the sacrifices and memory of their noble Armenian ancestors. Now, therefore, I, Georgie Pataki, Governor of the State of New York, do hereby proclaim April 24, 2003 as Armenian Remembrance Day in the Empire State. Our next speaker, Saro Kalajan, has been an active member of the Armenian community for his entire life. He's been the counselor at the AGBU camp, Nubar, Secretary of St. Mary's Church in Washington, D.C., now in his 4th year on the Central Board of ACYOA, serving as its chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Saro Kalajan.
Reverend clergy, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Armenian Church Youth Organization of America, I'd like to extend my thanks to the organizers of the event who have invited me to speak on this auspicious occasion. This past week, Armenians all over the world gathered to bow their heads in memory of the Armenian victims of the first Holocaust and genocide of the 20th century. Yes, we remember the Armenian Genocide, and yet, my generation, like the generation before us, still have some lingering and unanswered questions. Many of us still rack our brains trying to figure out why. We ask our parents why and our grandparents, and we ask the Lord, why did this happen? Where were you when the Turks butchered my grandparents? Where were you during the mass drownings? Where were you during the death marches? We have come to expect these types of questions in the face of great calamities. This is merely a natural human reaction to suffering. My dear friends, I wish I had a quick and easy answer. However, I don't have the answer, and I don't believe anyone does. What we do have is the hope that God's justice will conquer all injustice, that God's love will transcend all hate, that each of the martyrs will live with God for eternity, and that the perpetrators will be dealt with according to God's supreme justice. These words are not spoken and are not meant to be pacifiers. And I would never argue that as Christians, we need to be satisfied with all that transpires here on earth. Rather, we must act. We need to be instruments of the Lord's work here on earth. We are called to stand up for righteousness, stand up against injustice, and with God with us, who then can be against us? For the past 88 years, Armenians have been subject to another kind of genocide, one that aims to destroy the truth. Slowly but surely, the facts regarding our suffering are being clouded. For a people that still bleeds from wounds inflicted years ago, insult is added to injury. Yet, I cannot help but feel that the Armenian community has become complacent. We have come to a point in our history where complacency can no longer be tolerated. Each of us must respond to the call for action. God has called us to stand up for the truth and stand against those that deny the truth. We are blessed to live in a country where small but determined groups can and do affect change. Where do we go from here? U.S. government recognition of the genocide is one very small step, a small step that often gives me great pause. Does anyone here truly believe that if the United States Congress passes this legislation that acknowledges the Armenian Genocide, there will be substantial changes? Will decades of Turkish deception and intimidation tactics be replaced with apologies and pleas for reconciliation? Will survivors and the victims' families be compensated for their loss? Is it our intention to create an international environment in which Turkey would have no choice but to accept its past crimes? And perhaps most importantly, will the Armenian nation be healed? How will we as Armenians make ourselves known to the world? How will the world come to recognize an Armenian? Should they look for a victim or a victor? Will Armenians continue to define themselves as victims and survivors of the first genocide of the 20th century? Armenia exists as a free and independent sovereign nation. It is time to claim our victory and take our place in the history of civilization. We are indeed victorious over years and years of persecution. Our culture thrives, our language and traditions endure, and the Armenian spirit continues to permeate through each successive generation. Today is Sunday, and as with every Sunday, we put our faith in the resurrection. We praise God for all of the blessings He has bestowed upon us, and in 2003, we indeed have a lot to be thankful for. We are alive, we are strong, we are capable, we have a nation, and we have hope. Today we ought to celebrate life and rebirth, and on this sad anniversary, when we remember those that perished, we remember not only their sacrifice, but their eternal and victorious spirit. That spirit, the spirit of the Armenian people, dwells in each of us, and it's our responsibility to nourish that spirit. Spirit thrives not on bread and other forms of material sustenance, but rather through communion with God, through knowledge, through education, through cultural awareness, and through our love and support of one another as fellow Armenians. Today, let us celebrate the Armenian spirit through the legacy of our nation and culture. I hope you listened carefully to the speeches you heard today. I hope you listened for the pain. For as sure as I am standing here, our people have suffered tremendously. But when you get a chance, listen also for the joy. Voices of the past rejoice in our remembrance of them, and they are certainly proud that this generation of Armenians has overcome a tragic past. Our presence here today, this afternoon, is nothing less than a triumph. Let us celebrate it as one nation.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Zenia Afyan. Zenia is representing the Armenian community of former Soviet Union from Brooklyn and Queens.
Thank you. Dear friends, thank you for your invitation to participate in this important for all Armenians around the world meeting. Our ancestors have experienced the horror of genocide in the beginning of 20th century, and many Armenians here today from the former USSR who also here as a result of repetition of the same tragedy which took place in Azerbaijan at the end of the same century. Armenian genocide must be recognized by American, Turkish government and the government of the rest of the civilized world, so that the future generation would never have to experience the same tragedy. We have two large Armenian communities in America and Russia. We believe that these two, in Russian and American diasporas. We believe that the collaboration of these two diasporas, as well as the Russian and American government, would prevent such massacres as Armenian genocide all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Father Martyros Shevian, Dean of St. Vartan Cathedral, and His Eminence Archbishop Yerishe Gazarian. Would you come on up, please? Sir Bazan?
Please stand for the closing prayer. The prayer will be followed by the singing of the Hayr Mesh and the final blessing offered by His Eminence Archbishop Yerishe. Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy. O Christ, Son of God, forbearing and compassionate, have mercy in your love as our Creator upon the souls of them who are at rest. Remember especially, O Lord, the souls of the more than 1.5 million Armenians who were martyred at the hands of the Ottoman Turks during 1915 to 23. Remember our martyrs, Lord, when you come into your kingdom. Make them worthy of your mercy, of forgiveness and remission of sins. Count them amongst your saints and the holy at your right hand. Lord, we pray also for the Turkish people. Yes, Lord, we pray that they may have a conversion of heart and the courage to recognize and admit the truth of the Armenian Genocide, so that they may be freed from the chains that they have bound themselves with for 88 years. Lord, we ask this with an open heart and with great hope. For you are Lord and Creator of all, Judge of the living and of the dead, and to you is befitting glory, dominion, and honor, now and always, and unto the ages of ages. Amen. I'll now invite Archbishop Yereshe to lead us in the singing of the Hayr Mer and to offer the final blessing.
Ortnial der Mer Jesus Christos, Amen. Hayr Mer vo regis sor yeri tse arun ko yegese arka yotyon ko yegisin gam ko vorbesen kisye hegeri sozme ana azor dormes aiso talmes azabardismen vorbes yebemek tagu meros parda banos yeminanir mesipo sotyon oy ya Զիքոյ արքայություն և զորություն և փառք հավիտյան սարդեցամեն օրտնյալ եղերուկ իշնորասուր փոքվին երթագի խաղաղություն և դեր Հիսուս եղեցին ցես ընտամերեսյանս ամեն
Please remain, because our final performer, Ruth Ann Turekian Druids, who will sing God Bless America, and thankful for the haven that the United States has given many of Armenian survivors. Thank you. Hold on. Ruth Ann Druids.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with
for coming. Bobby Java.
Relax, Nate. Relax. Don't be like it.
Tell me, what does that T-shirt mean to you? How come you're wearing it today?
Well, I'm wearing it because today is It's April 24th, 1915, and
88 years ago.
88 years ago, 1.5 million Armenians were massacred by the Turkish Ottoman Empire.
Does that mean any of your great-grandparents or?
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of my...
Many people from our family and our village.
Do you want to add to that? Or?
Yes.
Who did you lose in your family?
I lost my great-grandfather and all his family, great-grandmother, both from my mother's side and from my father's side. We had a big extended family, and very few people survived, and they were only 10, 11 years old, the survivors, and they were kept by some Kurdish families in the village. And later on, when they grew up a little bit, in a few years, they were married by the Kurds. You know, they found an Armenian girl and an Armenian boy, and they married them, and then that's how the family grew. And during the Second World War, a lot of refugees, Turkish refugees from Bulgaria and Yugoslavia came to Anatolia, to central Turkey, and took over the remaining properties of all the Armenians. As a result, my grandparents moved to Istanbul from interior, and they left everything behind. So I was born in Istanbul myself, and I came to the United States in the early 70s, and my daughter, who you just spoke with, is born a New Yorker.
Yeah. So you're saying that there was almost like a second wave of hatred. The Bulgarians were allies to the Germans were allies to the Turks.
That's right.
And they allowed another displacement and maybe even butchering during World War II. I didn't know about that.
Yes, yes. Many Bulgarian Turks and Yugoslavian Turks were moved to Anatolia, and they really didn't want to stay there. They were sort of forced to move there, and the properties of Armenians were given to them. And in fact, my mother, who was a very young child at the time, I think she was 7 or 8 years old, remembers this displacement vividly, and every time she talks about it, she cries, and she still has nightmares about that.
That's the first I hear of that. Just one clarification. When you talked about losing, is it your great-grandparents?
Great-grandparents.
What year did that, do you have a year on that, when it began?
Well, the major genocide, actually the first genocide was in 1896, and it was by the Sultan Hamid. It was committed. The second, at that time, 300,000 Armenians were massacred. The second one was in 1909, and it mainly encompassed the area of Adana, the southern part of Turkey, the Cilician Armenia. Yes, yeah. Cilician Armenia, and during that time, over 40,000 Armenians were massacred. That was 1909, and then the major one, which was during the First World War, it was 1915, and with that, the entire population of Armenians in Anatolia was moved, and as a result, over 1.5 million lost their lives. And
when you say moved, are you talking about the forced
well, they were
death
deported.
marches?
Yes, death marches.
They were
to,
death marches. Is it?
To the
do you know,
Syrian desert.
Do you have the names of your great-grandparents to mention their spirit in honor of them?
In fact, my great-grandparent, his name was Krikor, which my grandfather, when my brother was born, his name was given to him as Krikor. And Krikor's brother, Kevork, who also perished during the massacre, and I'm named after him. These are my great-grandparents' father and uncle.
So his
Krikor
spirit's
and Kevork.
alive and well today here.
Yes.
At Times Square in
That's
the
right.
center
That's
of the...
right. It's far away from eastern Anatolia, where our lands are, but here we are in the freedom of United States, trying to regain our identity and gain our lands and political freedom.
Well, I feel honored that through you I'm able to acknowledge his spirit.
Thank
and
you
I
very
feel
much.
like he's
Likewise.
watching over us right here at Times Square. Name?
Aram Kalustian.
And we're at an Armenian festival picnic here in Eisenhower Park, Long Island.
Right.
And the Armenian flag is right there behind you. And you were saying you were saved from the genocide of the...
Survived.
You survived.
I was survived from the Turks, 1922. And 1922. You want me to tell the story?
Sure.
Gently? Okay.
Of course.
I'm going to say that the story in Greek. How's that? Sounds much better?
Well, I'll tell you, no. Why don't you say it in English, because the American people need to know it more than the Greeks.
Okay.
When were you born, first of
I
all?
born in Izmir, 1922. Is taping now?
Yeah, the month and the day.
Yeah, September 3rd.
1922.
1922, September 3rd. I born in Izmir. I was a 6-month-old.
Were you born in? You say
Izmir.
Izmir.
Smyrni.
Smyrni.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now it's called Izmir, but it was Smyrni before.
Right.
And there was a huge Armenian community there.
Right.
And they had the St. Stephen's Church.
That I don't know.
Yeah, the St. Stephen's Armenian Church is there. But you were days old.
6-month-old I was.
Well, I know, but the
When I
fire
went to
that
Greece.
burned down Smyrna was around September 11th.
Yeah.
September 11th, the fire began at
Well,
night.
I born September 3rd, they told me.
Okay, so how
Maybe, you know, those years didn't know exactly the age, the year, didn't know the people.
That was a very difficult month, September of 1922.
Yeah, right.
So what have you been told about when you were born, what happened, and how you survived?
My father was a slave, the Turks, and my mother and my grandmother and my little brother, they ran away to go to port in Izmir, Smyrna, to port, and from over there, I think they went in a boat and they went to Greece. Now, to go to the boat, one lady, he says to my mother, don't take your kid, he says, down to the baby, because the Turks, they're taking the babies and they're throwing in the air and they put it in the sword.
A bayonet.
Yes. So my grandma and my mother think what to do. My mother says, I'm going to put him in a placket and throw him over here under the tree. So my grandmother says, no, you're not going to do that. I'm going to put him in my shalwar. shalvar is a big pants the old ladies they used to use those years. So she put me over there, and she passed by from the airport from the Turks. That's the way I survived.
You know, I think you need to repeat, because if the Americans don't understand what was happening, they might not understand what you just said, because it's so unbelievable. What were they doing to the babies in September 1922?
They were thrown in the air, and they put on the shore, and they killed the babies. So my mother and my grandmother says, what we can do to survive the baby? So he says, I'm gonna put him in a blanket, put him under the tree. So my grandmother says, no, don't put him under the tree. I know what to do. That time the old ladies, they used to use big pants, big underwear, they call shalvar. So the Turks, they call shalvar. So she put me inside there, and you went through to the soldier.
You passed by
the soldier.
Did they tell you which ship took you
to
rescue
I don't
you?
remember, no.
Because
it was a Venizelos time. The Greek, the president was the Venizelos.
But you know, they say that there were 27 Allied ships. There were French, there were Italian,
there were Germans and all that. They told me. They used to people claim on the ropes and all that, and the Germans and the French, they used to cut the rope.
So you couldn't get on.
Yeah.
But you don't know which ship you got onto, but
no, I
it
don't
took
know.
you to Greece?
To Greece, yeah.
And what happened
and
then?
after Greece, they gave us a space, and what I named the town Peristeri. But they gave us wooden parents, no floors, dirt, and we stayed over there a few years. And after we found out my father at a fish market.
You found your father?
We thought it was dead.
And you told me earlier that before you were born, the Turks had taken your father as a slave to the work camp?
Yes, I was born already. They took the slaves, the town.
What did they do? Were they deporting?
They kept them someplace.
In a
I
labor
have a
camp?
picture.
In a labor?
I have a picture.
You do?
Yeah, I have a picture all together. About 40, 50 boys, guys, all together, you know, I have a picture hiding themselves.
Maybe we can put that in the film, that picture. That's nice. So you, as a baby, were rescued and saved right after you were born.
6-month-old I was.
And you know that they say maybe 1.5 million Armenians, almost as many Greeks, and 800,000 Assyrians were butchered as Christians by the Ottoman Muslim.
Yes, Kemal Pasha they used to call.
What do you know about Kemal Pasha?
He was a bad man, I know. I know all about it. He's a very bad man, and he killed a lot of Armenians.
There were Jews living in Smyrna as well, but no one seems to think that they were genocided or killed. Why do you suppose? Why weren't the Jews killed?
I didn't ever hear that. I didn't know what are Jews, no.
Yeah, well...
I know Armenians and Greeks.
They were Christians,
yes.
and they were being killed.
Christian, yes,
but
not Jew.
But why weren't the Jews being killed?
That I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, the Greeks allowed you to come on that boat with thousands of other refugees.
Other Armenians, yes.
They said there were 2 million Greek refugees eventually, and there were hundreds of thousands of Armenians, and a lot of the Armenians grew up in Greece afterwards.
Yes,
and
that's me and my brother.
And you spent 27 years there.
27 years, and after that I went to Cuba for 3 years. And in 1950 I came into the United States.
So you have quite a story.
Yeah.
Are there many survivors here that were older who remember?
My brother.
Is he here now?
He's older than me, 4 years older.
Does he actually have memories?
Yeah, now he's a little mental now. He's old
forgetting?
and yeah,
He's starting to forget?
yeah, it's other.
What about here in New York? Are there any people who are like 95 years old or 100 years old that could remember?
I have a big family. All of them they die. Yeah, we have a last couple of years. We have a 90 years old grandmother, other people. Yeah, they die.
Have their stories been recorded?
No, tell them to me.
No, they
what
told
happened
them
to
you.
us? Yes.
And now you're telling us.
Yeah, I tell my kids.
Oh, that's good.
I tell my grandchildren.
Yeah, I'm making a
One
documentary.
of my grandchildren, he wrote that in school.
Oh, very good.
You don't want to get a little sentimental.
It's okay to be
Yeah.
sentimental. You lost a lot of people in your family?
Yes.
You lost,
Yes.
Did you lose grandparents?
Yes.
Did they take,
They killed mother and sister, the Turks in the front to my mother.
in front of your mother,
Right.
they killed your...
Sister, brother.
I know it's very painful to talk about it even today, huh? But for those people that were lost in that genocide, if we don't talk about it or tell the whole world about it, then it's like they died for nothing. But
Yeah.
if we can tell the world about it, then we can help other people from dying
Right.
for those
Right.
terrible reasons.
No, the thing is they denied they didn't do nothing.
Yeah.
They're lying.
They're lying now.
Yeah, I'm here.
And they're giving millions of dollars to American universities
Right.
to rewrite the history. But the Greeks and the Greeks and the Armenians have to spend a little bit more money to record the stories so they
Right.
never get
Right.
rewritten about.
I think my nation, they don't. They're spending money, but nobody's listening to them.
Well, I'm one of those people that try to get the
They
stories
say
out.
all those stories, the books in Washington is on the highest shelves. The stories, they hide it, is on the top of the shelves. They can reach it to bring it to show to the people.
I know, that's why I'm making a documentary film, because seeing is believing. And
There's a lot of American presidents, a lot of politicians, they say, generals, they say what they did, what they do. They did it in the Turks, after Armenians and Christians and Greeks.
yeah, do you think that there were a few good Turks that tried to help the Armenians and the Greeks? Do you think that?
Me, I don't know because I was
Yeah.
a baby.
Yeah.
But my father used to say was a nice people also. They told them go away because they're coming, the Turks.
Yeah, there were some regular Turkish people that tried to help their neighbors. I've heard stories, they told them you better get out of here right away before they came.
Yes.
And the army came and they took your father
Yes.
and they put him in a labor camp. And they were hoping that he would die in
Yeah,
the
my
labor
father
camp.
was labor.
But they were hoping he'd die in the labor
Yeah,
camp,
yeah.
right?
Well, who knows? Yes.
Was there anybody in your family that was in the forced death marches? What they would march them in the desert in the
no,
summer and
no,
the winter?
I don't know anyone like that. No.
Yeah,
But I know my father was a slave. He was a slave to Turks, and I have a picture about 30 or 40 guys all together
in that
sitting on the floor. Yeah.
in the labor camp.
Must be.
I'd love to be able to show that picture to the people. If I could get a copy of it, I could put it in right now as we're talking. People would see it. So
I look for those pictures. You give me your name, your address, your
Okay.
telephone. I call you and I tell you, look, I got these pictures.
yeah, those are rare pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else? Do you want to say anything to the Greeks in Greek? You said you were willing to talk in Greek too. You want to say anything to the Greeks?
Θα ήθελα πάρα πολύ να εξηγήσω ότι έγινε από τα χρόνια εκείνα, μα δεν μπορώ να σας πω τώρα. Με συγχωρείτε, δεν μπορώ να σας πω.
Μπορείς να τους πεις πως είσαι Armenian?
Είμαι Αρμένης, έχω γεννηθεί στη Σμύρνη και έχω γλιτώσει από τους Τούρκους. Η γιαγιά μου με έβαλε στο σαλβάρι, στο βρακί της, για να περάσει μπροστά από τους στρατιώτες.
Σχεδόν το Σεπτέμβρη του 2022, από τη Σμύρνα. Και πέρασα στην Ελλάδα.
Πήγαμε στην Ελλάδα, στην Αθήνα, και μας βάλανε σε ένα μέρος μακριά από την Αθήνα, το ονομάται Περιστέρι. Καθίσαμε εκεί πέρα, ήταν παράγκες, καθίσαμε εκεί πέρα 3-4 χρόνια και ύστερα βρήκαμε τον πατέρα μας στα ψαράδικα και αρχίσαμε να δουλεύουν και πήγαμε, είχαμε νοικιάσει σπίτι μας στην Κανονία.
Οι Έλληνες δηλαδή είχαν συμπάτικο και φιλοξενία.
Ήταν το καιρό του Βενιζέλου.
Ναι, είναι ωραία που τα λες, γιατί και η νεολαία στην Ελλάδα ξεχνάνε τώρα με την κοινή μαρκέτα, όλοι ξεχνάνε και όλοι μας πρέπει να πούμε τι έγινε δηλαδή. Είναι ωραία. Και το όνομά σου πάλι τι είναι?
Το όνομά μου είναι Αράμ Καλουστιάν.
Αράμ Καλουστιάν. Και έκανες πολλά χρόνια στην Εύβοια, είχες ένα business εκεί.
Στην Εύβοια εμείς είχαμε μαγαζί, υφάσματα πουλούσαμε. Εργόχειρα, υφάσματα, και στην Αθήνα είχαμε μαγαζί. Το καλοκαίρι πηγαίναμε στα λουτρά της Εδιψού. Είχαμε εκεί πέρα, πηγαίναμε στα χωριά, στον Άιο, στο χωριό, στο Ξεροχώρι, στη Γουργουβίτσα. Τα μέρη αυτά τα ξέρω πολύ καλά. Έχω μεγαλώσει εκεί.
Νέα Πύργο νομίζω το λένε από πίσω, και ήταν όλοι πρόσφυγοι από τη Νέα Πύργο. Το θυμάσαι από πίσω από τα λουτρά, το χωριό Νέα Πύργο?
Νέα Πύργο, δεν το θυμάμαι αυτό.
Ναι. Λένε ήταν όλοι πρόσφυγοι.
Παλταγιάλουτρα που λες είναι απέναντι.
Ναι.
Απέναντι από τα λουτρά της Εδιψού. Από το χωριό. Τα λουτρά της Εδιψού, το χωριό είναι εκεί, ο Άγιος και Ξεροχώρη και τα άλλα.
Ναι. Από εκεί είμαι εγώ, η ρίζα μου στην Ελλάδα. Από τη μάνα μου, η γιαγιά και ο παππούς από εκεί είναι.
Yeah. Is this going to be much longer? My father's sister have a daughter, but her name is Arpine, and they were in a train, and the Turks they took her away. 11 years old. You never saw her.
Your father's sister?
Sister's daughter.
Oh, his niece?
Niece.
How old was she?
11 years old.
And they just grabbed her and took her away?
They never saw after that.
Never saw her again?
No.
Do we know what year that was?
The 1920s, 22s.
Around 1922. Yeah. Those are terrible stories, huh? They're terrible, but it's important that there's the flag over there.
I have one more question for you.
Okay. In a picnic in Eisenhower Park on Long Island, New York, and you happen to walk over and I'm assuming somehow you're connected to the genocide of the Christian population in Turkey. And
my parents, my grandparents, all of
them. How many survived and how many were lost there?
My mother's side, out of 28 people, 2 survived. My mother was one, her kid sister was the other one. That was it.
In what region of Turkey?
Yozgat.
Yozgat?
Y-O-Z-G-O-T, Yozgat. It's near Sebastia, if that's any.
Is that in what's considered Armenia today, the northeastern section?
No, that was in Turkey.
Is actually in Anatolia?
They were on the plains of Anatolia.
Uh-huh. And I guess the American people in particular that I'm trying to reach would want to know, how did most of your relatives die and how did the 2 survive? Do we have any details on, and what year are we talking about? When did your mother survive?
1915, 16.
Oh, so she was one of the first ones to get out.
What they did was, the Turks, you know, They're cheap. They don't spend money on bullets. They use daggers, knives, and hatchets.
I've heard those stories.
My mother has a deep, deep scar on her upper arm. And every time I used to ask her about that, she would cry. And I felt very bad that I made my mother cry. I never knew what caused it. And they wouldn't say anything. That was the worst of it. Thinking back now, the most wrong thing that they did was not tell us what was happening, because we could have gotten publicity for it. They held it like it was a terrible shame. And it wasn't. They were only victims. But it's past now. You can't.
One of my feelings is there's a Greek word called grignati. A lot of these gruesome stories, I have gotten the impression, and I'm wondering if you agree or disagree, that they wanted to spare their children from knowing these horrible realities, because had the kids known about it while going to school, they might have gotten into fights, or their teachers might have given them bad grades.
So what?
They were trying to spare their kids, I think.
That's foolish. It's wrong. It's 100% wrong to spare the kids. It happened. It was a cruel, terrible thing, but it happened. It was real. Why not let everybody know? Look what they did to us. And we still got out of it. We still came out ahead of it. It was totally wrong. Look at the Jews. They make money off it. And you got to give them credit. There's always a book to be read. There's always a film to be seen. There's always a show on television. There's a documentary, all about the same thing. So finally, well, you have it up to here with that. But they made the point. And when you talk to people and you say the Armenian Genocide, they say, what's that?
Yeah.
Because they don't know. That was a big, big, big mistake.
Well,
but it's done.
As a Greek American, there were almost as many Greeks that were genocided as well. And I think the Armenians have done a better job in getting that story out, and the Greeks still haven't really gotten out that story.
Well, we have this, the reason for this picnic today is this organization that we're in called the Knights of Vartan, V-A-R-T-A-N. Vartan was the patron saint of the Armenians. We hold every year now, we've been doing it for 19 years, in Times Square, April 24th. That was the day, the bad day of the massacre.
That's when it began in 1915. And your family was one of the first ones butchered. You said 26 out of 28? And that goes to 1915, because that's when your mother escaped. She was one of the first ones to...
I don't know how they got out. The way they got out, they heard screams. They heard their families screaming, all this yelling going on, and shouting and yelling. And my mother was 16 at the time. Her sister was like 2. They had been somewhere. Not really, I don't know. They weren't outside playing, but they were someplace. And they started heading back home, and all they hear from this town is screaming and screaming and screaming and yelling. And they approach the house where they live, and they're hearing terrible things out of the house. They don't understand what's happening. So they stopped outside, and a gendarme, they called them. They were like police, the constabulary of the area. The guy came out with a sword full of blood, and he was so tired from hitting with the sword, killing with the sword. My mother put her arm around the kid sister to protect her, and the soldier, the gendarme, took a swipe at her and took a chunk out of her arm, and then he left.
Wow.
That's the only thing that, and she won't tell me anymore.
To the very end, she wouldn't tell you anymore. So that was 1915, and that's when it began, and 26 out of the 28 family members wiped out, and your mother was one of the survivors at age 16.
That town there was kind of a center for learning, for education. There was a college there, and what the Turks did, they first went after all the males, all the men, and they said, come with us, we're going to set you up in a special organization because you're smart and so on. So what they do, they get the professionals. They get the doctors, they got the lawyers, they got the accountants, they got the pharmacists, they got the people who could read, they got the clergy. These are all intelligent people. And they took them all, they put them in wagons, they took them away. And the women are saying, where are you taking my husband, my brother, my child? Where are you taking them? Don't worry about it. We're going to help them very good, and then we're going to come back to you. Don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. And these simple people go and believe this.
Yeah.
What reason do they have not to? Because, you know, the government is a government. You got to do what the government says. Well, they never heard or saw from the men again. Now, there's nobody in the whole town to protect them. Nobody. And they have no weapons besides. They weren't a weapon kind of people. You know, they were intellectual, but a book was their weapon.
Yeah.
Now the women and the children are at the mercy of these soldiers, the gendarmes, all of that. And then little by little, you know, they gathered them all up and they made them on this big march out into the desert. Eventually, that's what happened.
Death marches.
Yeah, they were.
The forced death marches with no food, no water, watching them drop left and right.
And as they dropped, they would go through their pockets, not help them, nothing, not at all. They would laugh. I mean, not everybody laughed, but it was an awful scene. It had to be. I wasn't there. It had to be.
There are photos of the death march.
Heartbreaking. It had to be. And my mother would, once in a while, would come out. She'd say, they're talking about somebody among themselves, and we happen to hear, and they'd say, yeah, that one over there. She threw her kid off the top of a ledge overlooking the river. Because why? Why would somebody throw your child away? They didn't want that child to fall into the Turks' hands.
Yes.
And then many times the mother jumped in after it. Now, in all defense, every Turk wasn't that way. There were many Turks who took Armenians in and hid them and helped them as well as they could, because it was against the law to help.
Yes.
The Turk would get into trouble. It took a lot of guts to take Armenians.
Yes.
So, not every Turk, this is not an indictment of every Turk, but most, this is the way it goes. And I'll say this is not the first people this has happened to throughout history. It's happening again here in 2003. It's happening in Africa, it's happening in Iran, in Iraq, the Kurds over there. Take an awful beating. Africa, the Hutsis and the Tutsis, unbelievable what goes on there.
Yes.
And you have to talk about it. You have to give it publicity. You have to raise money and make a movie out of it. You have to do the. You must. If you want it to stop, that's the way it's going to stop.
I agree, yeah.
You can't pass a law and Congress say it's wrong.
Yeah, well, I'm working with Congressman Bilaraki from Florida to pass the joint resolution for the official recognition of the Armenian and the Greek
You know how
genocide.
long we've been working on that? It has come down to, in the Senate, they had to have 2 out of the 3 votes. They had 1 vote. Then the other 2 were waffling. One, Senator Byrd, West Virginia. Absolutely not. He was dead set against giving them that kind of recognition because America is our country. Turkey is the ally of our country, and we don't want to offend.
But Turkey fought with Germany in World War I and II.
That doesn't, nobody knows that. Of course they know.
Well, there's another problem, I think, and that is religion-wise. It's not just the Muslims against the Christians. It's the fact, I think, is that the Jews were spared that genocide, and the question is, why did the Turks not genocide the Jews? And that has never been answered.
I don't think there's any satisfaction. It's not that the Jews paid them off. They had nothing to pay them off with. It was a totally different religion. Christians, you know, the Muslims, the Turks, had something in because they had been taught that if you kill a Christian, you go to heaven. That's enough motivation. I want to go to heaven.
Yeah.
So it was a lose-lose situation for the Armenians. And finally, at the bottom line of everything, is money. The Armenians saw that the Turks and the upper class of the Turks were big thinkers. They used to sit around all day and think big thoughts. And they would eat whatever they would eat and think big thoughts. Meanwhile, the country had to function. And the Armenians, they said, well, go be a lawyer, because we need lawyers to go represent in court. Go be a doctor. Everybody is sick. You can help the people. So the Armenians became the professional class, and they started making money. You can't help but make money if you're a professional class. And they bought bigger houses, and they bought nicer furnishings. And now suddenly the Turks wake up and they look at these Armenians. All around them they have these great big homes, they have servants, they have everything. And the Turks are thinking big thoughts, but they don't have an awful lot. The easiest way is go kill them, take it from them, which is the old story. It's nothing new.
But also the Ottoman Empire lost its control of the Balkans when the Serbs, the Bulgarians, and the Greek Orthodox Christians united and finally pushed out in October of 1912 the Ottoman Turks out of the Balkans. So
that happened. The Bulgarians really beat up the Turks. The Russians kicked them out. They had loss after loss, and they were reeling from loss of face. With these crazy Turks, everything is face. That's the way it is. Even today, they were so mad at us because we didn't send, before the invasion of Iraq, we didn't send the troops over there, and they got so mad because they lost billions of dollars of space that the Americans would have paid.
They wanted $26 billion.
Which is,
it was almost like extortion.
It's plain and simple. That's what it was. But you see, if they, it doesn't matter. It's here. Money is at the bottom of it, and a lot of those people, the Armenians, were insured by New York Life for their life. You know that the Turkish government now, this is not very long ago, maybe 5 years ago, it's still in the progress. They went to New York Life Company and they said, since all those Armenians were insured by New York Life and they're not alive anymore, their government, the Turkish government, should be the beneficiary. So we want you to give all their money to us. See the goal?
And what's happening here?
Nothing. It's in litigation.
Well, you seem to be very knowledgeable, of course, and you want to be about your history that was initially denied you by your mother, in my opinion, to spare you of the agony of the reality of it. But do you think the big oil interests by the United States, such as Standard Oil, American Tobacco, played a role? As you know, allegedly the Americans, the British and the French, in the final days in September 1922 had 22, some say 27 battleships in the harbor in Smyrna, and they were initially refusing to pick up any Christian survivors.
What's happening, why it was happening, complex. You go to the President of the United States and say, President, look, these people are getting slaughtered. You got to do something with them. So he calls in the envoy from that country that's doing it, and he sits him down and says, what are you talking about? He says, Turks don't do things like that. He's saying this to the bald face to the President of the United States.
You're talking about President Harding in 1922?
Those bunch, it started with Wilson and it went on. And the President says, well, I can't call this man a liar. And the thing stopped. It stalled. Meanwhile, they're doing their business over on the side.
George Horton, the American ambassador, claims that in the final weeks of the culminating bloodbath in Smyrna, September 1922, possibly up to 200,000, mostly Armenians and Greek Christians, were massacred, butchered, and burned behind Smyrna and in Smyrna, and died in the water, trying to swim to safety.
One thing. We talk about the terrible things that happened to the Jews. And those Germans are so bad, rotten people. I tell you, the Germans were merciful. They didn't like a Jew. They put him against the wall, shot him with one bullet, finished. These people hacked with hatchets, with knives, with swords, anything would cut. They would hack at people, living women, children. And you know, you don't die with the first hack.
Yeah.
They hack and tack, and finally you lose blood and your limb falls off or whatever. That's how you die.
There are alleged reports, I'm sure you've heard them, where wealthy Greeks or Armenians or Syrians would give gold to be shot by a bullet for not to be tortured like that, and they would take the gold and still torture them.
I think that's what, I mean, everything bothers us, but that sort of thing, that didn't have to be done that way. If you were going to do it, put them against the wall. If it had to be, it didn't. They had no way to fight back. But this deliberate, wanton torture of innocent women and children. The men they shot, I don't know what they did with the men. It never came out. They hung them.
Forced death marches in the winter and summer.
And this is what rankles you. And then we get into the Senate of the United States, and because of Senator Byrd, he was known as the senator from Istanbul.
What year are you talking about?
This is not so far back. In the late 80s or early 90s.
Uh-huh. So you're an activist in the Armenian community.
I have been, yeah. I'm getting older, you know, but they know what I know, and I talk what I talk when I get the opportunity, and why not? It's a free country. I can do that. The more I talk, the more people hopefully will hear me, and they will maybe listen, and they will say, why? How come? Whatever. It's not fair. What did these people do? Why? Because they were smarter? Because they were more intelligent? Because they had faith in their God? What else beside those things, those terrible crimes? What else? Mm-hmm. And there is no what else. The indictment of the Turk is enormous, enormous.
And yet we hear reports where they are attempting to buy chairs of Turkish studies
they do that,
with millions of dollars
our money
to put in
Princeton.
Princeton's their headquarters.
$3 million. They bought a chair in Princeton. But you know, the people that they bought supposedly are authors, and they publish papers. You never hear about them. In the beginning, oh boy, a lot of stuff. We used to see it all. Carried no water at all. It was hollow. Everything, the water would drip right through. They had no basis in fact. And those things have drifted away. Because unless you can prove your case, you haven't got a case. And they have no case. Time after time after time. It's been tried, everyone has been refuted. Every word that they came out with, we came out with 22 words, including the comma and the semicolon and the bibliography at the end of the page and at the end of the book, and book after book after book, even out of their files. They would go over there and go through their libraries, out of their files. This is all real stuff.
Isn't the Professor Pelikian, is his name?
He's only one.
Who used the government official documents of Turkey to demonstrate the systematic genocide that had taken place, with the most likely implication of the Germans in helping out the
All of
Turks.
that is absolutely true. However, it doesn't hold a lot of water, because the only thing that Turkey has, as far as we're concerned, is location. They're otherwise good for nothing. Totally nothing. You can't tell me one book, one piece of literature that a Turk wrote. You can't show me one symphony that a Turk composed. You can't show me one doctor who developed a certain operation or cured a disease. And this goes on, that you can't see one artist. It goes on. They got nothing. I was over there not too long ago, about 3 or 4 years ago. I was a little concerned, but they don't know who I am. I didn't tell them. That was the end of it. But when you look at these people, I have to tell you, they are bankrupt. They are morally bankrupt. They are religiously bankrupt. They are financially bankrupt. And all of them put together, they are a nothing people. And even that is probably worse than what they did to us. We're surviving. The kids like us, the first generation, second generation, we're making out very well. And we have leaders in every field of human endeavor.
Yes, yeah, that's well known.
So,
can I just ask you one question? You mentioned that your mother was a 16-year-old survivor in Turkey. What about your father? Where was he
my
from?
father was, the area of the marches where they would go was sort of removed. I never knew a grandparent on my mother's side. I did know my father's mother, because somehow they came over here. The father's father, my father's father, and other relatives, I can't give you a number, were also caught up. They got caught.
And they were killed?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
That happened. The worst because it was where my mother, and besides which, my father didn't talk at all.
The men seem to have held their feelings in.
I tell you, they clam up. No reason. It's foolish. I say it here and now. I don't care who this is showing me. It was dumb. It was stupid. If you want to get your point across, tell me what's wrong.